So welcome everybody. This is our second session of Rachel Hardy's Up Your Parenting Game, Support Yourself and Your Family. We did a first session a few weeks ago for littles, and this is more geared towards parents of tweens and teens, but like Rachel said, applicable to everybody. So we are recording, and we are going to have a little question and answer at the end. If you would prefer not to answer, to have your, screen and your name out there, just we'll have an opportunity that you can email questions to our website. So, we want to make everybody feel comfortable, but we'll, this is a class that we received hologram funding for. So we're happy to do this the next 4 Mondays. We hope you can attend. They will be on the website, like Rachel said, and happy to have you here. And I will let Rachel get started.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, yes, thank you and welcome everybody. Class 1 of, oops. Hold on, my screen just went black and then it went there. Hold on, technical difficulties. I am not quite sure what it's doing. It's as though a button is being pushed.
I see your slide.
Okay, you're seeing the slide. It's not blinking or anything?
No, I'm seeing the slide, but it's like the PowerPoint version, not the presentation version.
Yeah. Okay, let me try something. My screen keeps flashing at me. So let me see if I just shared the wrong one. Yeah, it's in the slideshow. Okay. Okay. Oh, no.
We see it.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna go. My screen keeps flashing at me though. All right, maybe it's all settled out. Okay, anyway, that's always such a fun way to start with technical difficulties. But welcome, I'm glad you're here. And we're going to start with a couple of ease keys. And these are activities that are designed to connect you with your body and create balance in your system. So I do these throughout our class because these are practices, or these are activities that you can practice that you can then use to regulate yourself. And we'll talk about regulation later in today's class. So I'm just going to check. Shelly, did the screen change? We're good. Okay. So we're going to start with what's called getting your witness in play. And so I'm going to invite you to use this witness throughout our time together and to practice using your witness during interactions with your tween or teen, as well as throughout your days. So we are going to pause and we are going to take a moment to notice what is happening in our bodies right now. So stay as you are, nothing to change. Be curious about what's happening in this moment, almost like you're taking a snapshot of yourself. So you can start by observing your breath. Is it shallow? Is it full? Where is it going as you're filling up your lungs, as you're breathing in? Is it staying high or is it going deep? How would you describe the look on your face? What is your brow doing? What about your lips or your cheeks? How about your jaw? Is there tension in your jaw or your neck? And then what's happening with your posture? How are you holding your body? Does it feel comfortable? Is there pressure somewhere? Are you kind of collapsed? Is your abdomen contracted and tight, or is it expanding? And notice, what is the position of your feet? Where is your body being supported? So take a moment and observe in through those places in your body. And this is a habit that you can create. This simple little check-in is a practice you can do that's going to help you be aware of what's going on in your system and help you stay connected to yourself. Now, because we're going to be sitting for this next little bit of time, we are going to sit to support our bodies. So we are going to do what's called set your seat. And I would say these two exercises come from Self-Regulation by Teresa Pasacani. So setting your seat is about your sitting bones, your tailbone, and your pubic bone all together. So you kind of this hip structure. And they form a strong foundation for our spine and our torso, our brain, and our organs. And so by doing this practice, you can connect in with your built-in support system every time you take a seat. So if you're able, if you're not already too comfortable, if you're able, go ahead and stand up or lean forward in your seat if you're not in a good place to stand. And you're going to send your tailbone out and back as you sit down. And I think of it as like if you're a penguin and you have a little penguin tail, or if you're wearing a tuxedo with tails, you're going to flip those tails out and sit back down to set your seat. Feel the foundation created when your sitting bones and your tailbones are aligned. Now, gently, within any pain-free range of motion you have, rock your tailbone, alternating tucking it under and extending it back. And just notice how your body changes as you're moving your tailbone back and forth. As well as keep breathing. Notice when you want to inhale, notice when you want to exhale, and feel how your body and breath move together. Now do it one more time. And let yourself come back into stillness in the position that feels most comfortably aligned for you today. Notice the position of your tailbone. Notice the shape of your spine. And notice how you're breathing. So thank you for participating. Now that we've done those ease keys, we will go into our class more. So there are 4 classes tonight, next Monday, the following Monday, and then the first Monday in May. As Shelley said, you're welcome to ask questions as we go, but just know that they're being recorded. And at the end, we might, if we're depending on our time, we might have some time to ask questions outside of the recording, or go ahead and email any questions to Shelley at info@pw4kids.org, and she'll get them to me, and then we'll answer them anonymously in the next class. Remember to sign up for the remaining 3 classes. If you attend all 4, you'll be put in for another prize. And let's see, we're going to go for an hour. So who am I? So my name is Rachel Hardies. At this point, I work in a variety of capacities. I'm a mental health counselor. I specialize in play therapy for all ages, really. But kids seem to take to it better. I work as a parent coach and a mental strength coach for youth athletes and performers, adult athletes and performers, as well as working with teams and coaches about the mental aspects of performance. I also just starting, well, for 3rd season, but today we started track and field at Stevens Middle School. So I'm a coach for that. So I'm surrounded by a lot of teens and tweens. And in addition to my work, I am the mom of a 15-year-old. So I have a teen in my home, and I'm a significant other. I have lots of interests. I really enjoy running and being outside, and just really am passionate about helping people live their lives as well as they can. So here are some of the topics we're going to cover tonight, or through these 4 sessions, sorry. Tonight, we will talk about the stress response, regulation, co-regulation, what all of that means in terms of our nervous system. Next week, we'll talk more about kind of our thoughts and how that plays in with our nervous system. We're going to talk about this amazing developmental stage of tween and teenhood, and talk about some expectations for it as a way to help you be better set in what to expect from your kiddo. We're going to touch on temperament. I have attentive play, which is attentive play process of being near, which I teach for younger kids, for their parents to play with them with like toys and stuff. Tweens are kind of in that cusp. Some will play, some won't. And in teens, it's a bit different. So the structure and the ideas of it work with teenagers, you're probably not going to be sitting down on the floor racing cars around or building with Legos, depending on your kiddo. Some actually really enjoy that. So, but we're going to we'll talk about being near in a teen, through the teen relationship. And I guess I just want to kind of put out a caveat. My bias is towards parenting with the relationship in mind, with treating our youth with respect and allowing space for their individuality. That's one of the developmental parts of this stage anyway, is for them to figure out who they are. And so then as for us as parents, it can be really hard to give them that space. I guess what that means then is that this class is not going to be about rewards and consequences, punishments, timeouts, groundings, things like that. There's lots of other resources for that. I use those for as little as possible because I really am trying to parent with my relationship with my son. So, and those behavioral modifications might get us compliance in the moment, but they don't teach our kids what we want them to learn, and they don't help build relationship. They quite often build a lot of resentment, which is what I hear from the teens in my practice. So if you're looking for tips and tricks on how to make your teen or tween do what you want, quickly, this isn't the right class for you. Relationship building, though, does tend to build cooperation. And when we can hear our kids and be present to our kids, they're way more likely to respond with us and share with us. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is developing our own awareness of how we're interacting with our youth so that we can support them the best way possible. So like as a broad overview, we're going to go through those things, but as we were planning for this class, the topics that we can discuss around teens and tweens are they're quite large, and there's quite a lot of them, and honestly probably more than we can get through in 4 hours of time together. But I have a lot of flexibility. I have total flexibility to change, to add in topics or make topics that you're interested in. So I would love it if you could chat in or email Shelly what brings you here. What are you hoping to learn if we're interacting with your teen, as well as teens and sleep. That's a huge thing. Teens and technology, sexuality, gender identity, sexual intimacy, mental health and suicidality, drugs and alcohol, eating disorders, like all of those are very large, but we can touch on them, we can at least mention them, but if there's things like, if any of those are what you're really interested in, or you have other topics, please chat in or email Shelly or myself. My email will be at the end. And then I can fit those into a couple of our later classes. And if we don't get through everything tonight, I just move it to our next class, and that's where we start. So my invitation for you tonight is to witness your reactions, bring that witness in play, and witness your body responses. So the sensations that happen in your body as we talk. Pardon me, new information often feels uncomfortable, and that's okay. Please bring an open mind. Please be curious about the information, be curious about your reactions to it, your thoughts about it. You may know a lot of this information, especially people who work in the school district and have studied kids. You might know a lot of this. And I hope that you can pull out nuggets, or maybe I'll say things in a different way that will end up being helpful for you. I also notice if you're judging any of the information or if you're dismissing it. It's okay if you do. I'm simply inviting you to be aware of what's happening inside of you. Everything we know in mental health, body work, and wisdom traditions requires that we practice it to be effective. So when we talk about our nervous systems, our stress responses, and these self-regulation ease keys and different tools in our breathing and all these things that we kind of hear about, the way to make them the most effective is to practice them repeatedly. Practice, 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 practice. Practice them when you're not upset, so that it's more of a habit when you are upset. But you got to practice. And then I love this quote, forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it. So if there's information tonight that strikes you in a way that maybe you feel really bad about or feel shame about, please be kind to yourself. My intention is not to judge anybody. Parenting is such a tender topic, and it's one where we're often inclined to negatively judge ourselves and be defensive about new ideas or how we do things. And there's lots of advice out there about how to parent kids, and each kiddo is different. And so, breathe through reactions. Please be curious. We as human beings have a hard time letting go of ideas that we have or that we believe. But be kind to yourself if there's something tonight that hits you or upsets you. Okay, it's okay not to be a perfect parent. Kids don't need us to be perfect parents. That would cause challenges in other ways. They need us to be present, and they need us to be real, and they need us to love them. So with that, let's take a moment to breathe. Check in with your systems. Just one deep breath in, deep breath out. Notice where the air is going. We'll do one more big breath in and breath out. And we're going to dive into some of the science here. So 4 areas of threat. The current consensus among researchers is that a large function of our nervous system is to keep us alive by responding to a threat or a challenge to our survival, or more accurately, our perception of a threat or a challenge in the world, as well as our perception of safety. So in a split second, and it really even faster than that, our brain, areas of our brain are sizing up a situation to decide, can we overcome this challenge, which would be fighting it? Can we get away from it, which would be the running away, right? The fight or flight. If there's nothing we can do, maybe we freeze or we collapse. And depending on how we perceive these threats or these challenges, we're going to have different physical behaviors. And that's what we're going to talk about later. So the founder of synergetic play therapy, which is the play therapy model that I work in, Lisa Dion, has conceptualized 4 situations where we're likely to perceive a threat or a challenge. And part of this class was to kind of talk about parenting for the times that we're in. And while I think we're kind of on the edge of the coronavirus, just to put out there that the pandemic has created situations where we could be experiencing all 4 of these at the same time or at one time and cycling through, and as well as our kids, right? Our kids have had these experiences too. So the first threat is a perception of and actually being physically and emotionally unsafe, right? Our brains are judging. Does this person look like they might hurt me? What does their face say? How are they moving? What is their vocal tone? Is there an edge in their voice, a scowl on their face, a smile on their face? And so we're scanning people to determine if they're safe. We're scanning the environment to figure out, okay, am I physically safe? Is this person emotionally safe? And so a way we can use this to help our interactions with our kids is to pay attention to what is the expression on our face when we're interacting with them and other people, because we all do this. This isn't unique to any age, as well as what your vocal tone sounds like. So for example, I know when I get angry or when I'm about to cry, my vocal cords get really tight. And so my voice changes. And my son's very attuned to that. They know, they're pretty aware kiddos. And so these are things we can check in about in how we're engaging with our kids. Are we approaching them in an inviting way? So the second threat is when we perceive an incongruence in our environment. I think of it as a spidey sense, and our brain gets this tingle that something's not quite matching here. So an example of this is, when someone's like, let's say they're slamming things down and they're moving things roughly, and so we interpret that to think they're angry. And so then we ask them if they're angry, and the response we get is, I'm not angry. So right away, their behaviors and their tone are not congruent with their message. And it's going to put us a little bit on alert. It's going to possibly start activating the stress response in our nervous system. Our brains are very cued for these things. So the third threat that happens is when we're facing the unknown. And more specifically with that, when we're reacting to what our minds are telling us about the unknown, what stories we tell ourselves about what it's going to be like or what may happen. And honestly, including myself, rarely have I met anyone who tells themselves an amazing story about what's going to happen in the unknown. For the most part, we're putting pretty scary stories on the unknown. And we can play with like, what would it be like if we told ourselves kind of balanced ideas about the unknown and recognized, well, these are the things I'm imagining that could go wrong, but here are also the things I'm imagining that could go right. What if we imagine things going well? And I think this threat happens a lot for us, or I would say, no, it happens for me when I see my son behaving in ways that I really don't want him to behave in as an adult. And I start to kind of tell myself this story about how awful he's going to be as an adult, or something that's not going to happen when he's an adult. And that does not put me in the place of parenting from my best space. It usually puts me in an activated stress response. I'm worried, I have fear. And so being able to notice when we're telling ourselves things about the unknown can be helpful in, regulating ourselves. So the fourth threat that she identified is how we put shoulds or shouldn'ts on ourselves. In our own minds, we often tell ourselves that we should have done something or we shouldn't have done something. Others were really good at putting shoulds or shouldn'ts on us too. Friends will often be helpful and be like, oh, well, you should totally blah, 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 and offer their advice. And we put shoulds on others too. Oh, he shouldn't do that. They shouldn't have done that. And the challenge with the should and why it's perceived as a threat is because it's often denying reality. Right? It's saying that things aren't okay the way they are, and I should have done it this way. The reality is I didn't. And so this is where we are now. It might imply that we need to be different, or life needs to be different, or that the other person needs to be different, which is not something we have any control over. And so think about what should you have about your kids. How should they speak to you? What words should they use? How should they behave? Right? We have these kind of rules of human behavior and interaction, and they serve a purpose. But to should our kids with those things or to shouldn't them doesn't usually get us the response we want. So these are the 4 areas that we can perceive as a threat. A way to work with a should, or is to notice when you're using shoulds in your language. If you start paying attention, shoulds are everywhere. They are everywhere. And I have found that changing a sentence using the word could or the word would, because it usually is a direct replacement. I find for me, this change creates space and allows me to have acceptance for things where a should can be kind of locked in. So an example I often use is, sometimes we say it as shorthand, but I should go to the grocery store. But I can change that and say, well, I could go to the grocery store. And just for me, even when I say it and do it, it makes a difference in how I feel. Like, well, I have a choice. I could go to the grocery store. If I should go to the grocery store, there's a little bit more pressure there. So I invite you to play with that, to notice that in your language and play with changing it to could or shouldn't, could or would. So all of these threats perceptions of threats apply to our kids too. The unknown is one that I see coming up a lot with kids because they're young, they don't have experience. And so things might loom large in their mind that we don't even think about. And we may not understand what it is that our kids are perceiving as a threat or what they're upset about. And really, we don't need to. We can connect with ourselves and show them how to navigate through these situations. So I'm going to pause there and just see, are there any questions or thoughts? You're also welcome to make note of them and email them like we said. Okay. So now we're going to pop into a little bit more the nitty gritty about our nervous system and our stress response. Right now, there are so many different ways of discussing these aspects of our nervous systems. And I'm always kind of playing with what is the way that makes the most sense and what just gives us what we need to know. So understanding our nervous system and how we respond to it is the basis of being able to regulate, or what we would sometimes call as we want to be calm. It allows us to behave in ways we feel good about, allows us to support our kids, and allows us to be the parents we want to be, being able to be regulated. And regulating, being better able to regulate comes from understanding how our system responds. So adults and kids' nervous systems work the same way, right? We react to stresses or to threats with this stress response. And as adults, we have more robust frames of references, we have more experiences, and hopefully, and not all of us, though, we have the greater ability to be in our emotions and still interact in ways we want to. And we have more developed structures in our brains, and we'll talk about that. Our kids' brains, teens and tween brains, are going through a tremendous amount of growth. So this is a really pivotal time for them. So a lot of what we're talking about in terms of our stress response is part of this kind of automatic part of our nervous system that's responsible for our things like breathing, digestion, our heart beating, these things that happen out of our conscious control. And as I say those, I guess I think about, imagine a time that maybe you felt nervous or anxious, and see if you can remember, like, does your tummy get kind of upset? Do you kind of like twirly tummy or churning? Maybe your heart starts beating faster, right? Those are all your stress response. And as I describe these responses, there's no judgment that any one of these is better than another. I will say, like, some feel better for us, and we do tend to like to be calm, or we like to feel happy. We're designed to move through all of these depending on what's happening in our lives and the world around us. So they're all responses that our nervous systems and our kiddos' nervous systems are designed to have. And like I said, while feeling calm, centered, happy, excited, all feel good, they change and end just like all other feelings, or just like the other feelings that we don't enjoy so much, because our nervous systems are fluid, our reactions to our environment are fluid. And sometimes we have a stress response so quickly, we may not even be in conscious control of our words or our actions. So I've been experimenting, like I said, about different ways to explain it. And so we are going to explore the stress response through pictures of kitty cats, because I really like cats. If cats offend you or you really don't like them, then please imagine other animals in these pictures. So I'm gonna show pictures first, and I'm going to invite you to notice, like, what thoughts go through your mind and what sensations happen in your bodies. And also, like, so these are my interpretations of what these cats behave, or I guess behaviors, or what they look like, means. So maybe we need to use our imagination. So, okay, we're going to go through the first few pictures of kitties. And just notice, what do you think that cat's doing? What went through your mind? Or these two? Or these two? So just notice. So I thought of those as they're the alert, attentive part of our brain that's always scanning the environment inside of us and outside of us. And it's always asking the question, is there a threat? Is there a challenge? Right? So these kitties are like, what's out there? Can I eat it? Do I need to kill it? Am I safe? Right? So that's just the alert, attentive part of our brain that's always watching. So now check out what happens as you see these pictures. And notice if you have a different response than you did to the first ones. Do you want to pet any of those cats? No, me either. So the kitty in this top right corner, the orange tabby, that was my kitty. He died a few years ago, but that was the look he'd get right before he'd jump at me and bite me. And I never even knew really why. So that's the attack. Those are runaway cats, attack cats, or they're going to run away cats, right? There's the scaredy one. This is, we've probably learned at school, the fight, flight, or freeze response of our nervous system. So we mobilize this way when we believe that we can do something about this threat. We think we can meet this threat, we can face it, And the way to face it is to fight it, or maybe we can run away. It's also, I think of it in terms of it's the gas pedal of the nervous system. So it's in this response that we're going to have all of these. We could see anxiety, we could see irritability. This is where we see the increased heart rate. This is where that the autonomic nervous system comes in and our face flushes. There might be that rush of adrenaline. What we've learned is that when someone is in this nervous system state, they can't hear friendly voices. So this might be, maybe your kids will say like you're yelling at them, and you would swear like, I'm really not yelling at them. But if they've moved towards this stress response, they're not hearing your voice as friendly. This is where we see a tight jaw, right? The increased breathing rate. Sometimes we see exaggerated startle responses here. Someone's kind of on guard all the time, and so they're quick to react. Increased heart rate, or sweating, difficulty concentrating, might be rageful. So for younger kids, and teens too, we can see temper tantrums or meltdowns. So these are the real energetic, visible signs of a stress response. I also think of it as Tigger, how he's just like bouncing around and moving around a lot. So these, I invite you to notice, what of these do you do? Right? What does your body do when you go this way? And can you identify your teen or tween in this way as well, or your kids? Because we have a variety of ages. But so that's where we're going to fight, or we're going to run away. Or freezing is where we stop moving, but there's a lot of energy still running through the body. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the next set of pictures of kitties. And again, so notice, bring your witness into play. Maybe take a breath, notice your body right now, and then notice what happens as you look at these pictures. That one always makes my tummy go, whoo, scary kitty. And with these two. So this is the collapse or shutdown or sleep response aspect of the nervous system. So when we face a challenge and we don't think we can meet it, our system's going to shut us down. In the wild, it's preparing for death. It's a possum that just freezes, but its heart rate slows, everything slows. And so with our kids, it might look like the hood over the head and eyes, maybe slouching, maybe very little emotion on their faces, slow or no movement. At the extreme, people will pass out. You can also think about like Eeyore or pressing the brake. This is the brake on the nervous system. And this is where we're activated to shut. It's kind of weird to think of it that way, but we're shut down. We're activated into shutting down. We're immobilized by fear. So these are some of the signs. And so again, as you look at these, you notice where you tend to fall and notice where you think your kiddos tend to fall. Sometimes we see regressive behaviors where kids want caregivers to do a lot for them. Things they used to be able to do themselves, maybe they're not able to do. It's, again, we have a difficulty in concentration. So whenever the stress response is activated, it leads to a difficulty in concentrating, sometimes then a difficulty in remembering. People might faint, might feel like they are socially invisible, or might be in despair, non-responsive, maybe silent or slow to talk, low energy, right? Again, we're talking about Eeyore, low motivation. So if we can, again, it's not bad that we move through these states. What can be labeled as bad, or what we could judge, is sometimes what we do when we're having these responses, right? So if we get activated towards the fight or flight and say things that are unkind, we might regret that. Or in this instance, if we go into collapse or shutdown and maybe we stop paying our bills for a month or 2 or 3, right? And that's going to have some real life consequences. Those we could probably label as that's not the best outcome. But otherwise, this is what our systems are designed to do. It's expected and it's necessary. We can get stuck in these states or move to extreme ends for longer periods of time. And that's generally then where we see diagnosable mental health issues. So I don't know, like this would be a lot of the symptoms of depression, whereas the other one's a lot of symptoms of anxiety. But I go through all of this because if we can understand that energy activates in our body and results in behaviors or actions, then we can use our bodies to give us clues about what's happening in our nervous system. You can use watching other people's bodies or your kiddos' bodies to get clues about what might be happening. And our goal, again, isn't to avoid activation. We want to bring awareness to it and be able to be in it with whatever we're experiencing. So be a behavior detective for yourself and your child. Now we have these kitties. Who wants to approach these kitties? They're so sweet. There's a kitty. The black one on the left is my kitty now. She's not up here right now. Right? Don't you want to know, like, oh, those are so cute. I want to snuggle those kitties. And that's where we have safe kitties, right? This is what happens when we feel a sense of safety, when we're regulated. We might not necessarily be calm, but we're connected to our experience inside and out. We're able to manage our thoughts about what's happening. Stephen Porges talks about this as rest and digest and befriend, and we're engaging socially. We're able to approach people. It's our social engagement response. So generally, like, this feels really good. This is where we like to be. This feels great. And alas, we have to come back to it. We're not always in it. So these are typical signs of safety and regulation. You're able to notice your breath. You're able to think clearly. You have clarity about what's happening. You're making choices, like intentional choices about what's going on. You're able to make eye contact. You have emotional expression. Sometimes people describe it as feeling grounded. Gratitude falls in here. Often we can be regulated by feeling gratitude. All right, we're poised. This is where we meditate. This is where we can play. Well, we also need some of that energy of fight or flight to play, right? That activates us to move, to engage. It helps us get things done. So other cues then that we can use as parents is our facial expression, our vocal tone. When our hearts are resting, that lets our system know we're safe. If we're practicing smooth rhythmic breathing, that again these are internal physiological signs of safety, which then help us have the vocal tone and expression that maybe we want to have. And now we're going to do another ease key, and I like this one. It's so fun, plus it's a kitty, but it's called relax your jaw and find your ah. So the jaw is a very common place for people to hold tension when they're stressed or uncomfortable. So that's something you can check in for yourself. And the idea is that relaxing jaw tension is a gateway to ease, is a gateway to regulation, releasing tension in our neck and our chest and our abdomen, all from releasing tension in our jaw. So for many of us, a yawn or a sigh activates the relaxation response in the body. Oh, so even just talking about, so we're going to start by yawning. It doesn't matter if it's real or pretend, but let yourself yawn and notice, even if just thinking about yawning or talking about it creates the urge to want to yawn. Excuse me, because it certainly does for me. So start by yawning. Feel the heaviness of your lower jaw just straight down, and the weight of gravity. Feel the softness in your cheeks and your jaw as you relax it. And you're welcome to turn off your camera if you don't want anybody to see. So then I want you to find your ah or a sigh. So you're gonna yawn and go, ah, or a big sigh, and just let all that come out of you. So yawning activates the relaxation response and opens space in the back of our throat so that we can take deeper breaths. So go ahead and take a few more breaths. And as you exhale, make the ah sound. Ah. And use your witness. Notice, what does it feel like in your neck? What does it feel like in your jaw? And what is your breath doing? Thank you. All right, then regulation. So it's about being able to be in whatever experience we're having without shutting it down or avoiding it. And it's a continuum, like we looked at. There's the attack cats and the runaway cats and the scared cats and the safe cats and the alert cats. We just kind of go up and down this. And the goal is to improve our ability to move toward and be in the intensity we feel in our bodies so that we can be self-aware and work with that energy. And so one way, so we notice our thoughts, we notice our body sensations, and one way to help ourselves stay on top of our experience is called name it to tame it. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It comes from Dr. Daniel Siegel, and it works like this. You identify what you're feeling, what you might be thinking, or what body sensation you're having, just any one of those, and then you name it. So you could say, oh, my chest is feeling kind of tight. And you can even name it out loud around your kiddo, because this, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but this is how co-regulation works. You can name what's happening for you, and they're generally going to check in with what's happening for them in that way. Or you could say something like, oh, I'm having the thought that this is going to hurt, or something like that. And then talk about, okay, but I'm going to take some deep breaths and I'm going to tell myself I really don't know. And in this way, we can keep our experiences from taking over our lives, right? We tame them. So we name it, we make it a known. Oh, I'm feeling squiggles in my tummy right now. Okay, well, I know what to do when I feel squiggles in my tummy. And then I do it. And so you can practice naming it, taming it for yourself. You can practice it in your head, and you can practice it out loud in front of your kids to help them understand that maybe you feel nervous too, or you feel scared too, you feel unsure too. And then you show them what to do with that. So like I said, a big key, our focus tonight is about connecting in with our body. It's answering the question to, like, how do you know? So if I were talking with a friend and I would say something like, oh, I'm feeling really angry, to connect with my body, I'd say, well, okay, how do I know that I'm feeling angry? What are the sensations inside my system that let me know I'm angry, or that I would identify as feeling angry? And so because this is a practice, I thought about, like, our bodies offer us many opportunities through the day to ask the question, how do we know? So a generally safe place to start, but you know yourself, is what are the sensations of needing to eat? How do you know that you're hungry? Or how do you know that you need to go to the bathroom? What does that feel like? And for those of you with younger kids who might be potty training, labeling and identifying those physical sensations of having to go to the bathroom can help them connect in with, oh, this means I have to pee, this means I have to poop, or at the very least, this means I need to go to the potty. Or how do we know that we need to go to sleep, that we're tired? How do you describe that feeling? The scientific term is sleep pressure. What does that feel like for you? What happens in your eyes, or maybe your ears, or your brain, or something like that? So I invite you to practice connecting with your body in these maybe more noticeable ways, but definitely these repetitious ways throughout our days of being hungry, needing to go to the bathroom, and feeling tired. So then there's this cannon breath is another way to practice regulating. There's so many different ways to breathe. So to practice breathing, or to use our breath as a way to connect with ourselves and regulate. So I invite you, if you already have one, keep using it. If you don't, explore others. But this was one I thought was kind of fun. So you check in with your breath, no matter how you're feeling. This isn't just because you feel good or just because you feel bad. Just how are you doing? So settle onto your seat. Breathe in, breathe out. If you're feeling tense, take a deep breath in, right? Tense your muscles, hold your breath. And when you start feeling the need for air, let the breath out with a deep cannon breath, like, right, so around the mouth with a short burst as you release the air through your mouth. So again, take a deep breath in, hold your breath, tighten everything up, and let that breath out. Depending on how comfortable you are, you might want to do that in private, but you can certainly, I think I've done that as an expression of exasperation in dealing with my 15-year-old, and he probably needs to do it too. So, all our breath helps our posture, helps our muscle tone, affects everything. So you can practice can breath. Okay, so co-regulation is this idea then of lending our groundedness, our connectedness, ideally, right? That's why we've gone through all of this stuff, is so that as parents, we can practice our own regulation to stay connected, to stay grounded, so that we can help our teens and tweens and kids and friends and people around us really reconnect with themselves. And co-regulation requires one person to be regulated and able to regulate. And that's why it's this key component, and you're modeling these things for your kids. And that is one of the best ways that right now, we think we as human beings, that's one of the best ways we learn. So modeling for your kids, noticing what's happening, naming what's happening, and then what do you do with it? Breathing, stretching. It's currently believed that co-regulation is a result of a resonance and attunement through a mirror neuron system, which are cells in our brains that help us understand the actions of intentions of other people. So there's the scientific basis for it. And like we saw earlier, a good example of yawning, and how generally we want to yawn after we see someone else yawn, or even at the mention of yawning, so even I can feel it coming up my chest. And so co-regulation is not age specific. People of any age can become dysregulated, and people of any age can borrow another's regulation and another groundedness. So I tend to use my breath a lot. And if I am struggling and I see the person I'm with starting to struggle, I'll be deliberate in my breath, and I'll make it just slightly audible so that they can hear it. And even if they don't take a deep breath, although sometimes they do, at the very least, that pathway, because of these neurons has been activated. And it's way more effective to do that, to name it, to tame it, to take the slightly audible breath, than to tell someone to calm down. Has anybody made that mistake with any of their kiddos or friends even? Where like, it's okay, calm down, take a breath. I have never seen that work. When my son was little, I had grand thoughts of teaching him how to regulate young and breathe, and it didn't work. Anytime I suggest he needed to take a breath, I'd usually get like, okay, that wasn't the breath I was talking about. So I take breaths. I keep myself regulated or calm and connected. And as a result, he usually does too, or at the very least, I'm better able to stay present to what's happening with him, as well as people can't hear well when they're upset. And so it's not a time to talk to anybody. This is the time to be in our bodies and movement. So that's co-regulation. And so we had talked about kind of like, so when we put this class together, it was several months ago, or when we started these sessions, and it was about kind of the reality of now. So we have lots of opportunities to have a really high stress response right now, for whatever reason. Like, I kind of like that idea that we're all in this similar storm, but we're all on very different boats. And so whatever it might be in your life might be leading to a stress response. We have a lot of opportunities to perceive threats right now. Generally, what I've seen is we have very low thresholds. And so most of us are much more reactive, much more easily defensive. And so you can always check in with, like, what is your mind telling you? What do you tell yourself about your kiddo? What do you tell yourself about what's going on in the world?
I think you were just covering it, but we had a couple. Summer said, how does this work when you're right in the thick of it, when the kids and parents are no longer regulated at all? And she got a thumbs up on that question. I think you're sort of covering that.
Okay.
I don't know how much.
Yeah, no, actually this is perfect, because right after this, we just have the resources.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
And we'll send out resources. So actually I might go here. So this is how to contact me if anybody has questions. Yes. So that's the thing, right? Being in the thick of it is ideally the time as parents that we can connect to ourselves, that we can pause. You can even create the agreement in your family that when things get this level of intensity, and maybe you create a thermometer, we're going to take a time out and we're all going to go to our rooms and we're all going to breathe. And then we're going to come back 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, whatever you all agree on. Because there was a really interesting study that, oh my gosh, their names just escaped me, but they're the really famous couples researchers at UW. Anyway, they did some interesting research. Now it was with couples, but I've really found over time, if you look at all these things with couples, it generally applies to just about any relationship. And so in this one instance, they had people hooked up to heart rate monitors, and they put them in a room and told them to start having an intense conversation or having an argument. And then when they watched the heart rate levels activate to a certain level, so they started to see the stress response happening, they went in and they gave them a false reason for why they needed to pause. And they had each person go to a separate room. And then they fixed whatever was broken. And then they brought the people back together. Heart rates had gone down and they were able to go on and have a more productive conversation. So it is absolutely okay to take a break and come back. It's going to be way more productive than everybody amping each other up, especially if as a parent, you're having a hard time staying connected to yourself. Better to call time out. But the important thing is to come back to it. And maybe it takes multiple timeouts. Maybe it is a really tense, upsetting subject, and maybe it takes multiple timeouts. And we'll go through more. This is kind of laying the groundwork, but we'll talk about empathy, we'll talk about attuning, like all these different ways of responding. But for now, using your body, and in the middle of those things, you can just be like, oh my gosh, my tummy is so tight and I'm clenching my jaw. That's probably going to shock everybody into a pause. But you can just name what's happening for you. And chances are that it's going to help the kids pause and go, oh, wait, what's happening for me? But so that timeouts, right? Practicing these things when you're not in the thick of it. That way, it's more of a habit when you are in the thick of it. So if you're driving and you're starting to get frustrated because you're hitting every light red, well, what does that frustration feel like? And what are you going to do with it? Do you need to stretch? Do you need to move? Do you need to take some breaths? And help these things, right? That's that practice. And this is where life gives us infinite times to practice. So hopefully that answers it. If not, you can ask more.
And Michelle just added, what about talking in turn?
Yeah, if you can do it and listen, right? If people can, if you can share, I think of that in terms of like passing around the talking object, and the only person who can talk has the object. Yeah, if everybody can do that, really hear. So like pausing, we get into this place where we listen to respond rather than listening to understand. And especially with our teens and tweens, right? They're brilliant. They're amazing. It's an amazing age group, and they have a lot of thoughts, some of them, a lot of them. And so really pausing to hear them, hear what they're upset about, setting aside our judgment. And so if everybody can talk in turn and really hear each other, then that's great. There's a game called the game, and it's a question game where you're not allowed to talk. And so someone shares, and if anybody has questions, they write them down, and then there's squares where they can ask questions or make comments, but they have to simply listen, and the other person simply gets to share. And I use that with families a lot of times, and I've had a lot of really good feedback about that. Sometimes you can find it at Goodwill. Yeah.
And then Vanessa, I think it's Vanessa, said they practice things like belly breathing so that they have a go-to. And so when stuff like that erupts, that they have a place to go. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Like I said, there's so many different ways of breathing. There's volcano breathing, there's blow the soup. I watched a movie over the weekend or last week where they simply would say, oh, do you smell that? Which makes someone take a big breath in and a big breath out. And you can ask, yeah, oh, take a really, do you smell that again? So kind of these covert ways of helping somebody take a breath or regulate. Oh yeah, the volcano in her tummy, right? It just wants to come out.
Yeah.
Yes,
Awesome.
good question. Yeah, any other questions? We have a few minutes left. Like that was the end of the information for tonight. Any questions about our nervous system and reactions and anything like that?
That you can answer in like 30 seconds.
The what?
That you can answer in 30 seconds.
Yeah, make it an easy one.
Oh, Michelle has a teen who does not identify with sleep.
Yeah, let's make that a topic for later class. In the resources, a book just came out at the end of March called Generation Sleepless, and it is all about teen sleep and how they're not getting enough and how to help them, because they're really teens are sleep deprived significantly. Yeah, so we'll talk about that one. I've started the book. My son's he's adverse to mornings. Yeah, teens and sleep, teens and screens. And then, yeah, when you drink cold water on the vagus nerve. So the vagal nerve runs from our brain stem all the way down our spine and then branches out into our organs. Not into a lot of our muscles, but into our organs. So it's much more internal. Excuse me. So the idea is that cold water, that the vagus runs down the side of our neck. And so when we drink cold water, that cold is, reaching our vagus nerve. And then I don't know the mechanism of why cold helps us regulate, but it activates the vagus nerve in a way that settles the system. So that's why cold water on the neck, cold water on our faces, pressure even on the front and back of our head is a way to regulate, a way to use our body. Like anything that uses our sensations helps bring us into the current moment, which pulls us out of our brains. But it's interesting. I don't know the specific reason why cold does it, but it does it. And is ADHD? Oh, good. Oh, Michelle, you're reading that. Yeah, that's right. You got that book too. Nice.
What's the name of the book? I can post it.
Generation Sleepless. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, when I started having my son get off screens a lot earlier than I was.
Well, and I just read the other day that even an hour less screen time is sometimes, kids are like, cold turkey, what?
Right.
But even an hour less a day for us and everybody is going to lead to positive.
Yeah, well, it does lead to an increase in sleep if I remember the stats from the book, how far I've read. All right, Summer, how do you have these conversations with your kids when according to they're right all the time, right? Oh yes. Oh, I can tell you sometimes that leads me to have tantrums with my son. Yeah. Maybe conversations about what exactly? Anything?
It's 7:30 now, so I would say if Summer, if you have something specific that you want to take for the next minute or two, let's do that. But otherwise, email me or Rachel.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And because I just want to kind of be respectful of time and Rachel's time and everybody's time.
Yeah.
So
yes, we can pick it up next week too. But yeah, the first place my brain goes is lots of listening first. We listen first. Lots of listening, lots of empathy. Yeah,
indeed.
So great. Yeah. So yeah, Shelly's got the email in there. I think you probably all have it anyway, but just if you have questions between now and next week, bring them up. Next week will be, we'll talk about thoughts, a little bit more about regulation, more about attuning and empathy. I think those are some of the topics. So,
and I will have this video downloaded and uploaded to our website. So if you had a friend, I know we had quite a good turnout. So I will send this out to the people who signed up but couldn't make it. So do not discourage them from coming to future classes.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like I said, send info@pw4kids.org and I will filter those to Rachel. And yeah,
Great.
this will be good.
Yes, thank you everybody for your chat and your questions. I've written them down. So we have some of those things to dive into. And if there's other topics, like I said, there's a lot around teens that can be really scary for us as parents, to go ahead and email those and we'll work them into the later classes.
Awesome.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
We'll stop recording and yeah. Awesome. Have a great night, guys.
Bye.